This is it.
If someone's on the edge of having a heart attack or something, this could push them over the edge.
To address the problem, management. To address the problem.
NASA is already looking towards the future. The next generation rocket will have a much more powerful exploration upper stage with 4 engines and 4 times the thrust. That next-gen rocket will help NASA send crew and cargo on longer missions to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Since the early 70s, NASA has only sent humans to low Earth orbit, a couple of 100 miles above Earth. Now, it needs to protect astronauts on longer missions into deeper space. For that, NASA has partnered with Lockheed Martin to build a new kind of spacecraft, Orion. With Orion, the stakes are critical.
When you build a spacecraft, you can't make mistakes.
The stakes are critical.
You're going to an environment that no one and nothing ever sees. It's a harsh environment, but that's why they're astronauts and we aren't. We aren't. We're astronauts. An environment.
It also contains enough food and water for a 3-week mission. Above the service module is the crew module. That's the pressurized capsule that Lockheed is building. It's a third larger than the Apollo command module, and its computing systems are 4,000 times faster. It has 4 crew seats, a compact exercise machine, and a toilet with its own door. This capsule doesn't just have to keep the astronauts alive in space, it's got to protect them when they come back to Earth too. During re-entry, Orion will travel at almost 25,000 miles an hour, so it's going to get hot.
For the low Earth orbit vehicles, when they return, they got to withstand about 3,000 degrees during re-entry. The Orion capsule has to withstand about 5,000 degrees. And so the heat shield and the thermal protection systems on the aft end of the vehicle.
But way bigger, because in this case, we are building rockets. And yes, they're actually building them right now. That's all the banging and crashing you can hear. That's all the banging and crashing you can hear.
The SLS is made up of the massive liquid hydrogen tank at the bottom and the liquid oxygen tank on top. These tanks need to withstand huge pressures. The launch of this rocket is essentially a controlled explosion after all. The launch of this rocket is essentially a controlled explosion after all. But they also need to be as light as possible.
So if you imagine a Coke can expanded to the size of a liquid hydrogen tank, your barrel wall thickness is pretty close to the same ratio. And the engineering that's been there to be able to withstand the pressure and the hundreds of thousands of gallons of fuel in there, and the engineering that's been there to be able to is pretty amazing.
Now it's where Artemis 1 is going through its final checks before launch. But we've still got to get to launch day. And like any true space program, there have been plenty of delays. Artemis has been in the works for more than a decade. It was originally slated to launch in 2016. Now, NASA hopes to launch Artemis 1 this year, after finally wrapping up pre-flight testing. As for boots on the moon, 2025 might be ambitious. In fact, NASA's own Inspector General puts that date at 2026 at the earliest. And then there's the cost. The Inspector General says the Artemis program will cost NASA $93 billion by 2025, and each Artemis flight will cost $4.1 billion. What's more, each SLS rocket will only fly once, and there are no prototypes being launched on shorter test flights like we've seen with SpaceX's Starship. This rocket, this is it.
To address the problem,
NASA has only sent humans to low Earth orbit, a couple of 100 miles above Earth. This is it.
No one and nothing ever sees, but that's why they're astronauts and we aren't.